Oh my god, the police were completely at a loss after this whole story. So, on the 24th of July 2019, Alexandra hitched a ride from her hometown of Dobroslaveni to Kalarashi. She got picked up by a 5-year-old mechanic named Georga Dinka, who, kidnapped her, raped her, and held her captive. The next day, on July 25, she actually called the emergency line 112 3 times, begging for help. She told them she'd been kidnapped, locked in a room, and assaulted. But, shockingly, the police didn't take the proper steps to rescue her over the next 19 hours.
Sunt domnișoara, am 15 ani și ieri am fost sechestrată de către un domn.
Cum te cheamă?
Mă cheamă Alexandra, vă rog, veniți repede, nu știu unde sunt. Veniți repede, vă...
Oh my god, you guys, it wasn't until Alexandra was found dead that the police finally kicked off an investigation. When the detectives tracked down her last known location, they stumbled onto, like, a total monster hiding in the shadows. Someone who seemed ready to spill some horrifying secrets and prove that she wasn't the only victim. So, who is Alexandra Măceș-Șanu? How does Louisa Minu fit into this nightmare? And who's that mysterious guy visible on Google Maps, whose fate somehow tangled with theirs? Hey everyone, welcome to Detective Michael's channel. Since this is, one of my first videos, I'd love it if you shared your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what I could tweak in the video to make it better. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Alright, let's get back to the story. Welcome to Romania, friends. Romania is like this magical country right in the heart of Eastern Europe, famous for its medieval castles, the stunning Carpathian mountains, and, of course, Dracula legends. Bucharest, the capital, blends old-school architecture with a modern, buzzing vibe. Tourists flock to the colourful villages of Transylvania, the picturesque monasteries of Bukovina, and the Black Sea coast. Honestly, it's a place where nature, history, and culture mix together to create this incredible sense of adventure and discovery. Now, normally this is a pretty quiet town, almost nothing really happens here. There are a few supermarkets, like 3 or 4 industrial areas, a nearby military base, but overall, life is super calm, and the biggest news is usually just some small gossip. But on the 25th of July 2019, everything changed, really suddenly. At 11:05 a.m., a young woman named Alexandra Măceș-Șanu dialed 112, which, just to remind you, is Romania's emergency number. What you're hearing in my voice is based on the actual call recording, but since it's in Romanian, I'll translate it for you. Alexandra greeted the operator. "Hello, I want to talk to the police. I'm 15, and a man kidnapped me yesterday." The operator asked, "What's your name?" Alexandra replied, "Alexandra Măceș-Șanu." "Please, come quickly, I don't know where I am," she said, sounding a bit panicked. The operator then asked, "What do you mean you don't know where you are? Do you know the area?" "In Kalarashi. He took me there, but I don't know the exact spot," Alexandra said, with like a touch of irony. The operator pressed, "Okay, give us a landmark in Kalarashi so we can find you. Were you harmed?" Alexandra whispered, "Yes. Please wait. Don't leave me." "Oh no, he's coming back here, please, come quickly, please." Then the call suddenly dropped. For about half a minute, the operator, who had asked a colleague for help, was totally lost. They had no idea how to track Alexandra, because she could only confirm the city, not the house, street, or even the neighborhood. Luckily, she called back just a minute later, and this time, she gave a few more details. After saying hello, Alexandra told the operator, "It's me again. I don't know where I am in Kalarashi. I was blindfolded, and when I could finally see something, I was near the dam." Here, she accidentally gave the wrong name of her kidnapper. "I was kidnapped by a man named Pescu Gabriel." It's worth noting that even though Alexandra was smart enough to find his business card in the room she was held, that card actually didn't belong to her kidnapper. She continued, "I can't see where I am. I'm locked in a room, and all I can see are the gates. Yesterday, I was hitchhiking to the city, and then he grabbed me into his car. He locked the car and said he could take me. I don't remember the license plate, but the car was grey with a flat hood. I drove past the dam, but now I don't know. I think I'm in Baldy. Maybe not," the operator asked. "Are you with your phone?" Alexandra replied. Yes, but he has it. I'm calling from his phone right now. Please, send someone. I'm really scared. At that point, the police took over the call. At 11:07, they asked Alexandra again where exactly she was. She desperately searched the room for any clue. I drove past the dam and I think I'm in Baldy now. It can't be anywhere else. Wait, I found an address. Number N, Antonius Kelarashi Boulevard. Unfortunately, that address was wrong. When the police explained to Alexandra that the location pointed to an apartment building, she insisted she was in, like, a rural area, seeing only a yard and a gate. Up until now, both the operator and the police officer sounded irritated and even dismissive toward Alexandra. Despite her incredible efforts to signal for help over the phone, the police left her twice without real assistance, even as she tried to give specific hints about her location. Then the police officer told her, "Stay where you are, the police are on their way." Alexandra replied, "I don't really have a choice. I'm locked in a room, I'm terrified, and he's beaten me." You could hear her desperate pleas for help, but in between her cries, the impatient officer said, "Hang up and wait until we contact you." This is just horrible. Honestly, this attitude is totally the opposite of what any operator should advise. In almost any other country, they'd probably tell her to stay on the line and not hang up, so she wouldn't be left alone. Sadly, these calls only get worse, and I swear, listening to them can make you want to scream. But before we dive into that, let's talk about who Alexandra Maciejszanu actually was, and how she ended up in this nightmare. Born on the 15th of September 2003, Alexandra grew up on the outskirts of Kelarashi, in a small village called Do Ruseveni. People described her as friendly and popular at school. She had no trouble getting along with classmates. After finishing primary school, she went on to the Mihai Bayu Theoretical High School. She was known as smart and kind-hearted, very close to her family, and full of big dreams for the future. At the time of this story, she was only 15. Growing up in a village of just over 3,000 people, she often went into town to hang out with friends or go shopping. Public transport was unreliable, or sometimes didn't exist at all, so she often relied on other ways to get around, and unfortunately, that meant hitchhiking. It's worth noting that hitchhiking in Romania is much more common than in countries like the US or the UK. In fact, in some parts of Australia, like Victoria, it's even illegal. So, on the 24th of July 2019, Alexandra was visiting friends in town and tried to hitch a ride back home to Do Ruseveni. Tragically, that's when she met a driver with hidden, sinister intentions. The man pulled up and asked where she was headed. After she explained she needed a ride just a few miles from town, the older man agreed to help. So, Alexandra thanked him, got in the car, and buckled her seatbelt. But as soon as the car started moving, the driver manually locked all the doors and told her to stay calm. A few minutes later, he stopped the car, and Alexandra was forced to put on a blindfold, so she had no idea where they were headed. He took her to his house, where, tragically, multiple assaults happened that evening. Alexandra's parents quickly realized something was wrong, especially after she stopped responding to messages and calls. They went to the local police station to report her missing. But Alexandra could only reach the police the next day when her kidnapper carelessly left his phone with her. As I mentioned, she made the first 2 calls to the police, but just a few minutes later, she made a third, final call, and their response was even more outrageous. After the call ended, Alexandra called emergency services again. "Hello, what's your emergency?" the operator asked. Alexandra asked, "Have you sent someone yet?" The operator connected her to a police officer. "Please, did you send someone here? I'm terrified, he's beaten me." The officer replied, "Yes, we've sent someone. Stay where you are, don't move, just 2 minutes, young lady." "Who are you afraid of? Who is it?" he asked. Alexandra said, "I think his name is Pescu Lucian Gabriel. I found his business card and thought maybe it's him." The officer responded, "Ah, so you don't know for sure either. Okay, stay put, a patrol will be there in 2-3 minutes. But through her tears, Alexandra kept begging the officer to stay on the line with her. Then he said, "Miss, I can't stay on the phone with you. We've got other calls. Wait for the police team to arrive and try to calm down a bit, okay? If we're busy on the line, the team won't be able to reach you." And then, just like that, the line went dead. When the officers arrived at the address Alexandra had given from the business card, they realized, tragically, it was the wrong address and wrong name. Because of this, the officers had no idea where she actually was, and by forcing her to hang up, they lost any chance to contact her again. It's no surprise that later, the police realized just how badly they had messed up. They immediately mobilized their entire force to find Alexandra. In situations like this, every second counts, and each minute feels like an hour. Tragically, it took 15 hours to track the calls. The police reached out to the Special Telecommunications Service, STS, for help tracing the calls. Unfortunately, the coordinates provided by STS covered too large an area to pinpoint her exact location. Still, the officers managed to find a car in the area that matched Alexandra's description, which was also confirmed by CCTV footage. Eventually, they traced the vehicle to a house belonging to a man named Gheorghe Dincă. He was 65 at the time and worked as a mechanic in the area. Sadly, his other activities also fit the story. See, Gheorghe was kind of like an informal taxi driver, so to speak, operating without a proper license. That might have made Alexandra feel safe, at least initially, when he claimed he was just giving her a ride. Gheorghe's house, out on the western edge of Călărași, was huge, like seriously massive, and it was surrounded by thick bushes and walls that totally hid the building and its 3 extra floors. On top of that, there was a metal gate that matched Alexandra's description perfectly. Funny enough, creating a profile on Gheorghe didn't take much effort at all. Google Maps had accidentally captured a few photos of him near his house just weeks before everything happened. But here's the really infuriating part. Even though Alexandra's location was pinpointed at 2 a.m., on July 26, the police and prosecutors decided to wait another 4 hours before raiding the house with a warrant. And this was even though the law didn't actually require a warrant for the situation. I mean, sure, maybe it would help build a stronger case in court, but seriously, at that point, Alexandra's life should have been the top priority. Finally, at dawn, the officers raided Gheorghe's house, and what they saw was absolutely horrific, way worse than they could have imagined. Gheorghe was completely stunned as dozens of officers stormed through his gate. His shock was so intense that he ended up revealing some of his darkest, most terrifying secrets, some of which even seasoned detectives found utterly shocking. Tragically, the police were too late to save Alexandra. By the time they raided the house, she had already been dead for several hours. Gheorghe admitted that he had killed the young woman after kidnapping, beating, and assaulting her, and then tried to dispose of her body by burning it.
Bună ziua și bun găsit! De la o oră la alta apar noi detalii terifiante din ancheta crimelor de la Caracal. Alexandra a povestit la 112 că a fost sechestrată într-o casă de un bărbat pe care l-a descris și despre care a spus că în acel moment nu era lângă ea pentru că plecase la farmacie ca să cumpere cremă pentru a-i trata rănile de la...
After a thorough search of Gheorghe's house and the surrounding property, the police found human remains and jewelry in a barrel, everything belonging to Alexandra. But that wasn't all. It turned out Gheorghe was also linked to another disappearance, which, sadly, had happened just 3 months earlier, in April. That was when one 8-year-old Luisa Minu went missing from her hometown of Călărași and was never found. As it turns out, Gheorghe was responsible for her disappearance too, meaning Alexandra was at least the second woman murdered on his property. As you can imagine, the public reaction was huge, emotional, and intense. Thousands of Romanians were outraged for multiple reasons, leading to a protest of over 2,500 people in Bucharest. People were shocked not only by the deaths of Alexandra and Luisa, but also by how authorities had handled their disappearances. The police's slow response was already frustrating enough, but it got even worse when people realized the officer and operator sounded sarcastic and irritated during Alexandra's desperate phone call, while she was clearly terrified for her life. During the protests, friends and family of Alexandra and Luisa held memorials for their daughters, both families grappling with unimaginable grief. But, as I'll explain later in the video, not everyone supported honoring their deaths. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Gheorghe told investigators that he had burned Alexandra's body to destroy evidence, while admitting that Louisa's body had been dumped in the nearby Dan River. Later, he changed his story, claiming he had also burned Louisa's body. He eventually agreed to take investigators to a forest, where they found several cremated bone fragments at the spot where he supposedly disposed of her remains. Forensic experts couldn't establish a complete DNA profile from these fragments, because the bones were overly calcined. The organic carbon had burned completely, leaving pure white bones, sometimes unrecognizable. Unfortunately, DNA testing soon confirmed that the bones found in Gheorghe's house belonged to one 5-year-old Alexandra Mshanu, confirming her murder. Regarding the trial, Gheorghe's case began in August 2022. In the Romanian legal system, there are no juries, so both civil and criminal cases are handled by a single judge. This is called a bench trial. Additionally, there's a process for approving the verdict, which can take up to a year to ensure the sentence is fair and just. He faced multiple charges, including human trafficking, child trafficking, sexual assault, murder, and desecration of a body. As expected, he put up a strong fight in court. Although he initially confessed to killing both women, he later changed his stance, even denying any connection to their deaths during the trial. By this point, however, the evidence linking him to the crimes was nearly indisputable. Alongside the phone calls and his confessions, CCTV footage captured his vehicle near the spot where Alexandra had been hitchhiking, corroborated by additional videos showing her nearby. It was established that his first crime began on the 14th of April 2019, when he kidnapped Louisa Minu. Before this, Louisa had been taken to Gheorghe's house, where she suffered multiple attacks before tragically being killed the next day. Then, just a few months later, in July, Alexandra suffered the exact same fate. Evidence shows that she was chained to Gheorghe's bed before being murdered. Both women endured unimaginable horror in the final hours of their lives, before this cruel monster tried to burn their bodies to erase all traces forever. To make this case even more disturbing, it turns out Gheorghe couldn't keep his twisted, perverse fantasies to himself. While Alexandra was held captive, he reportedly told one of his friends, Ștefan Ripianu, about it, and this friend also attacked her. And, as shocking as it is, Gheorghe had a wife, who was later arrested for possible knowledge of Louisa's disappearance and murder. The trial itself was not only controversial, but filled with wild claims. Despite the overwhelming evidence and his confessions, Alexandra's and Louisa's families don't believe Gheorghe acted alone. They suspect he was lying to the police to cover up a human trafficking network, which, unfortunately, is a widespread problem in Romania. So the big question remains: did Gheorghe act alone, or did he have accomplices? The families also believe that the prosecutors investigating Alexandra's disappearance deliberately delayed the raid on his house, giving him time to hide evidence. Moreover, during the investigation into Louisa's disappearance just 3 months earlier, the prosecutors who had the CCTV footage of Gheorghe's car and license plate didn't question him or search his property. The prevailing theory is that Gheorghe was just a scapegoat or part of a broader criminal organization, possibly even in collusion with officials. On top of that, DCOT, the Romanian Agency for Homicide Investigations, made several mistakes with the available evidence. For example, while Alexandra's DNA was confirmed in some teeth found in the burned barrel, other results were inconclusive. Some teeth even showed dental work that Alexandra didn't have. The forensic team didn't catch this initially, and later examined the teeth in a way that destroyed the ability to analyze each tooth individually. Despite these uncertainties, DCOT issued a death certificate for Alexandra, which her family refused to accept. Working on this case was extremely emotionally draining for the investigators, though they were doing their best with the evidence they had. So, it's not surprising that Gheorghe Dincă was ultimately found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Under Romanian law, 30 years is the maximum sentence for someone over 65, which fits perfectly here, because given his age, he'll never see freedom again. In addition to his prison sentence, the court ruled that Gheorghe must pay 700,000 euros, roughly $722,000, in moral damages to the families of the two victims. While his verdict was initially not final and could theoretically be appealed, the appellate court ultimately upheld the 30-year sentence as both legal and justified. His accomplice, Ștefan Ripianu, was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In my opinion, it should have been more, but considering that other inmates now know what he did, you can be certain that his time behind bars will be truly hellish. So that's the fate of Gheorghe Dincă, but honestly, his life is irrelevant compared to the lives he destroyed. His vile actions and monstrous behaviour, fueled by depravity and violence, led to the deaths of 2 young girls, who endured unimaginable horror in their final hours. Alexandra, Maciej, Shanu, and Luisa Minu were bright young souls whose lives were cut far too short. Their dreams, laughter, and love for their families were tragically stolen, leaving the nation in mourning. Alexandra's courage, in particular, stands out. Kidnapped, beaten, assaulted, and trapped in a locked room, she still managed to find a phone, reach out for help, gather clues from her surroundings, and ultimately aid in unraveling her own murder. It's a heartbreaking tragedy that the operator and the police officer didn't provide her the support and comfort she desperately needed during those calls. The least they could have done was stay with her on the line during her last moments. And I'm not even talking about Gheorghe, he was the absolute monster. Let the memory of Alexandra and Luisa serve as a reminder that no one should suffer as they did. Romania continues to fight for better laws and protections to safeguard women and future generations. Sadly, Luisa's grandmother still refuses to accept the tragedy and believes her granddaughter will one day return home. In her hope and faith, she continues to care for Luisa's dog, awaiting her return. Gheorghe's house remains abandoned, weeds growing unchecked through every corner of the garden. This case also highlighted a serious issue with public transportation, or the lack thereof, in rural Romania, and how hitchhiking, still relatively common there, can carry significant risks. For clarity, Lucian Pesu, the man whose name appeared on a business card Alexandra found, was completely innocent and had nothing to do with this case. He had only met Gheorghe once while working as a real estate agent and didn't even know him personally. Interestingly, after this case, several officers, including the national police chief, were dismissed. I couldn't confirm whether it was specifically because of this case, but I sincerely hope so. And one more chilling detail. It's yet another instance where remnants of the story appeared on Google Maps. Seeing Gheorghe on screen, ominously staring at the camera just weeks before Alexandra was murdered, is deeply unsettling, especially considering it was after he had already killed Luisa. So that wraps up our coverage of this tragic case, friends. But before I go, I want to ask you a few questions. Do you think Gheorghe acted alone, or was he part of a larger criminal organisation? Some even suggest possible government involvement. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to read them. Thank you so much for watching today's video and making it to the end. That's all for now, friends. As always, take care of yourselves and each other, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. This is Detective Mike, signing off. Thank you, and goodbye.